I'm very, very pleased that we have such a lovely turnout today once again. This is becoming our norm to have this large crowd. So my name is Leilani Freeman, and I'm a volunteer with Chisago Agewell. We have such a good turnout, and while people are still getting seated, may I ask, how many of you have never been to one of our events before? This is your first time? Wow, that's marvelous. Thank you so much. And I see lots of familiar faces too, so I know we have about an equal number of returning people. So it's very nice, very good to see you. We do one of these events about 3 times a year, and our next one will be in August. Now, a little bit about Chisago Agewell. Chisago Agewell is a not-for-profit organization which exists to provide information and resources that help adults live well and age well in their homes and community. The Chisago Agewell Coalition also fosters collaboration between various nonprofit organizations, businesses, individuals, and service groups that work with older adults and caregivers in Chisago County, and you will see examples of that collaboration in the room here today as we have Chisago County Public Health here, and we have a new group that's going to talk to you today, and we have a sponsor for our food. And so Agewell is a coalition of lots of organizations throughout the county that are here for the benefit of older adults and caregivers. Chisago Agewell relies entirely on small grants, local donations, and the help of volunteers. For those who are able, we welcome event sponsorships and financial support to help us continue our programs. Donations to Chisago Agewell are tax deductible. Now I'd like to pose one more question. Chisago Agewell programs are not only designed to provide information and resources for adults as we age, but also to assist those who care for others. Caregiving takes many forms. It can be as intense as 24-hour round-the-clock care of a loved one in your home. Or it can mean providing intermittent housekeeping, laundry, personal care for a relative, a friend, or a neighbor. It can also be as simple as offering a helping hand with day-to-day tasks, buying groceries, preparing a meal, making and getting them to a medical appointment, or checking in regularly with a neighbor just to see how they're doing. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to ask for another raise of hands. How many of you here today are caregivers? Keeping in mind what we just talked about. How many of you help a neighbor, assist with someone who needs your care? Well, thank you, because Agewell is also for caregivers, and we invite you and welcome you. Before I forget and we get busy with everything else, there is an evaluation form that was on your table when you sat down. Underneath your notepad, we left you a little notepad, a pen, and an evaluation form. Before you leave today, we want you to complete that evaluation form. Either leave it on your table or put it in the blue bin out the entrance as you leave. We really look at every single one, and we especially appreciate your suggestions of future topics and any comments you provide. Now, before we begin, I want to extend our gratitude to Hospice of the Midwest for helping to sponsor today's refreshments. And I'm going to invite Mariette Hafler up here to step up and just say a few words about her organization. Mariette is a member of the board of Agewell, and which is part of the coalition.
Hello, I recognize many of you. My name is Mariette Hafler. I was in Eichton, and I had Eichton's shop there for 15 years on Highway 8. But I have been called to work in hospice care now, and I am a community liaison, and I'm very passionate about educating on the Medicare benefit of hospice. Just quickly, I don't know how many of you know that hospice is available to your loved one or you much earlier than when death is imminent. And it is an amazing benefit that provides free nursing, home health, music therapy for some organizations, massage therapy, pet therapy, social work, and chaplain. And it's a way to keep people home and out of the hospital. And we are absolutely fantastic at managing pain. Um, so I just like to be sure that people know that. It's not a matter of when you're ready, it's do you qualify? And who qualifies is if you have a terminal illness and it's in its end stages and there's nothing more that they can really do, you probably qualify for hospice. And it's worth looking into to have a great end of life journey. So I'll be over here at the table and I have some wonderful handouts if you'd like. Thank you.
All right. Today we're going to hear from 3 speakers on the subject of living with chronic pain. We have a geriatric nurse practitioner, Cynthia Lowline of mHealth Fairview, doctor of physical therapy, Carol Levitt Mueller, also of mHealth Fairview, speaking on staying in motion, and Doctor of Psychology Colleen Erb of St. Croix Health, speaking on pain and the brain. In addition to our speakers, we have 2 information tables over here to my right, your left, and that is Chisago County Public Health, which is a very active partner in our efforts and events, offering information on strategies to manage pain as we age. The second table is staffed by the Steve Rumler Hope Network. Now that might be a name that's new to you. And at this time, I'd like to invite their representative, Ashley Hansen, to step up here for just a moment, if she can wangle her way out of there, and just tell you her briefly what they do. And you are welcome, of course, afterwards to speak with her after the event. She can tell you about her buddy, too.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay. I'm Ashley Hansen. I'm with the Steve Rumler Hope Network. Thank you for having us today. We are a nonprofit based in St. Paul. Our work is strictly geared around the opioid epidemic. So what we do is we distribute naloxone. If you're not familiar with what naloxone is, it is the medication to reverse an opioid or a fentanyl overdose. We also provide education on how to recognize and spot opioid and fentanyl overdoses, as well as harm reduction tools like fentanyl test strips. So if it's all right, I'd like to just share a little story of how I got involved in the network. So my father was someone that suffered from chronic pain for a number of years. He had numerous, about 10 neck and back surgeries. He was heavily addicted to opioids and to prescription fentanyl. He was at a point where he was, immobile. It was taking him away from doing daily activities. And through medical assisted treatment known as MAT, he was able to get his life back. The medication that gave him his life back is Suboxone, which is a pain medicine to block the opioid receptors in the brain. But I share that just to encourage hope that, if you are someone that suffers from chronic pain or deals with chronic pain or are a caregiver to someone with chronic pain, there is hope. Another avenue that he found to relieve some of his pain is a holistic approach of massage therapy and acupuncture as well. So on my table, I have the medication naloxone to reverse opioid overdoses, as well as fentanyl test strips, as well as pamphlets on some of the tools that I just talked to you about. So thanks for having me, and if you have any questions, myself and my service dog Bear will be over there. Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
So thank you again for coming. Now, on to our presenters. I will introduce each speaker as they come to the podium. After all 3 have spoken, I may ask a couple of open-ended questions of the entire panel. We will then invite questions from the audience. We do ask that you hold your questions until all 3 speakers have finished speaking. You have been provided with a notepad. If a question comes to your mind while they're talking, jot it down, and then you will welcome your question after we conclude all three speakers. So let's get started. Our first presenter is Cynthia Lowline of mHealth Fairview. She's going to be speaking to you on pain as we age. She is a gerontological nurse practitioner. Cynthia provides care in transitional care units, nursing homes, and assisted living facilities on the north side of the Twin Cities area for Fairview. Pain control is among her special areas of interest. She is passionate about caring for older adults and believes in providing patients with the quality of life they deserve, both physically and emotionally, wherever they are in their life journey. Please join me in welcoming Cynthia.
Hello. Okay. Not used to speaking as a speaker. I'm used to speaking up very loud for older people for their ears and stuff. Okay. My name is Cindy Lowline. I am a geriatric nurse practitioner. I do work for mHealth Fairview. Our office, a lot of times people think I work in a clinic, but I do not. We do have what is considered a clinic, but it is an office at the old Midway Hospital down in University. Otherwise, there's about 30 of us nurse practitioners that go out to assisted livings, transitional care units, and long-term care units. And I happen to work in all three of them at this time as our caseload can change and such. And I've been doing this for 29 years come July. So it's something I really love doing. I wanted just to touch briefly on some aspects of pain. What's the difference between acute pain, chronic pain, where do you start to go get help, different types of things that can include holistic health, non-pill form health, I guess you could say, things just that you can start with, and then basically your provider would be the one that kind of helps manage a lot of things and can get you out to the appropriate people that could help you. So the first part is acute pain versus chronic pain. Acute pain usually is under 6 months. It usually has to do with personal damage to your body. Say you fell down and sprained your ankle, or you broke a hip. Those all get treated, and typically the pain goes away. It also can be just inflammation. It usually is well localized. It isn't an all over systemic reaction. Chronic pain usually is over 6 months of time. Some good examples that I think of are peripheral neuropathy. If you've ever heard of that, basically it's a lot of nerve pain that can really impact someone's life severely. Also, I think if you've ever had shingles, shingles can have that post-herpetic pain where even though the shingles are gone, the pain still lingers. And so many times I see people in my field be on medicine and I have to ask them, what are you getting this for? And they'll say, I had shingles at one time. So basically, even though the injury has been treated, it's you may have long-lasting pain. So where to start with pain? Easiest place is what type of pain. If it's really severe, hopefully you'll go to the emergency room and get immediately treated because pain is not normal. Most of the time we are not supposed to be living with pain. And so the emergency room sometimes is our best friend or urgent care because something happened immediately. At there, they may say follow up with your primary provider. And if you don't have a primary provider, that's a good time to have one because they're the ones that can get you directed in the right direction after they do their assessment. So when you see your primary provider, they're going to assess your pain. And usually pain is very subjective. Everyone handles pain very differently. Some descriptors of pain is like they'll ask you, where is it? How long have you had it? Can you describe it? Is it stabbing? Is it dull? Is it sharp? Does it happen at night? Does it happen in the morning? And they may ask you, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. Nonverbals could be facial expressions, body movements, mental status changes. So if you're a caregiver, you might start seeing these things in your loved one and think about what's going on. A lot of times pain will increase your blood pressure, your heart rate, your respirations, and sometimes it can cause sweating because it's so profound. What we can provide when you go to a clinic is imaging. Usually we start with x-rays if that's the case. From there, then they can make referrals if it's something, they find something that needs to be done if they can't treat it. Physical and occupational therapy are usually part of the healing process, and so they feel if you need to have that, they will certainly make those referrals for you. Then they'll talk about medications. There's all different types of medications, which I'll get into a little bit. And then other specialists. Is it bone related? Do they need to send you to orthopedic? Sports medicine. Let's see, what else? Usually sports medicine is non-invasive. And then there might be other people they might have to see. Say you're going in because you have stomach pain. Maybe you need to see the GI specialist. So it just all depends where your pain is and what's going on. Then there's a psychosocial aspect of pain, the physical, psychological, and social factors. I think most of the time we forget about those things, but my feeling is as pain becomes more chronic, then sets in the social aspects. So uncontrolled pain can cause social isolation. Where I work, there's people who just don't come out of their apartment because they are in so much pain, they don't want to be seen, and so we try to make their life better in some way, somehow. Depression is a big one with our older folks. You might not think that, but people might tell that you're more irritable or sad, whatever the case may be. Low motivation. You're not motivated to do anything. Oh, I don't want to get out of bed today. I can't do that. And it's not uncommon that people can do things for a short time, but then they get tired and so then they stop. Sleep disturbances. Not getting to sleep or get woke up and they're in a lot of pain. It's okay to take something during the middle of the night if you're in pain, but it's not uncommon people will take pain medicine before bedtime just so they can relax and get up in the morning. Falling more. Your balance might be disturbed, or you might find that you're just falling a lot more because something's going on. Those are good reasons to go into a doctor. And then obviously decreased quality of life. Just trying to think here. They seem older than their age. That's a good way of putting it. Sometimes when I look at people, we look at their skin and it looks nice and soft, and they say they're 90 years old, and we say, oh, wow, you don't look that. So something in that realm. And then loss of body function. Could it be that they just can't get up on their self anymore to transfer to the chair? Have they lost other types of bodily functions along the way? I think when we age, we think that that is going to be the case. Unfortunately, sometimes it is. So next is pain treatment. I just want to talk about opioid-free pain treatment. Over-the-counter medications are very common that people use. Tylenol and ibuprofen. Aspirin is another one that older folks like to use because that's what they've known, and that's totally fine. The thing is, you want to tell your provider, what are you using? Tylenol is most common, recommended for pain, and I always just say schedule it, just because if you don't, you're chasing your pain. If you schedule it, at least you're staying on top of the pain. Maybe it's not going to be effective and maybe you need something else, but that is something that you want to talk to your provider about. Ibuprofen or NSAIDs, like naproxen, aspirin, Celebrex, Voltaren, are used to decrease inflammation and pain. They run the risk, you can run the risk though of taking those with ulcers, cardiac exacerbations, and renal trouble. And so you want to be mindful of if you're using those type of medications. Over-the-counter creams like Bengay, Biofreeze, lidocaine cream. There's patches out there that people can buy. And more commonly, the newer one is Voltaren gel. Voltaren gel is considered an NSAID, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. These type of creams work local versus systemic, and a lot of times people like that, just because you can apply it for 3 to 4 times a day. Herbal medicines, I'll talk about that a little bit, about holistic pain management. Ice and heat therapy is also beneficial. Ice is usually for short-term pain. It helps with the inflammation and pain. And then the heat typically is when people are using it for chronic pain. A lot of times we'll see people who have their heating pads laying over their couch. And so I'll ask about it and they just say, no, it just helps with some discomforts other than taking pain medicine. Muscle relaxers can be used for acute or chronic pain, depending what type of disease process that you have. And anticonvulsant therapy is also used for pain control. A lot of times people might have experienced trigeminal neuralgia, which is in their face, or the post-shingles pain, peripheral neuropathy if they have diabetes. Some of those medicines are helpful for that. And then lastly would be antidepressant medications. There are a few that are helpful. They're not usually the first line of drugs, but they help with being congruent or complementary is what I'm trying to say. So, benefits of topical medications: they decrease the risk of systemic adverse effects. They decrease the drug-to-drug reactions. They have a direct access to the target point. So if someone says, my shoulder's hurting me, they might put on BioFreeze, and it helps relax them and maybe they're able to move themselves better. And lastly, easy application. You easily put it on wherever it hurts. Holistic pain management. There are clinics out there for holistic pain. In my field, I see a lot of herbal medicines that will come through. I will be asked about them sometimes, and it's not my forte about them, let's put it that way, but I do see them, so I try to learn about them. But first, holistic medication or pain management is an emphasis on individual approach to living well. They promote their own health and wellness, which can include conventional and complementary methods. Working with professional guidance that are into holistic health or in the clinics is probably one of the best ways, because they can do a lot of treatments and have ideas of how to deal it without taking those pain medicines. It could be exercise like yoga or Tai Chi, stress management, reducing the impact of your stressors, acupuncture, massage therapy, physical therapy, diet, nutrition, aromatherapy, talking therapy, and then heat and cold therapy are usually what surrounds the holistic pain management. Some of the medications that I've come across are going to be like turmeric. Turmeric helps with decreasing inflammation and swelling of pain. Usually that comes in a capsule form. And capsaicin cream like Bengay is often used as well. And then glucosamine chondroitin is a combination drug that usually helps maintain the cartilage levels in our body. As we age, we might have more arthritis. This gives us a little bit extra support. People find that it helps take away some of the discomforts they have as another means of taking something else other than Tylenol or ibuprofen. The other classes of drugs I mentioned, like anticonvulsants, some of you may have heard gabapentin or Neurontin. There's Tegretol out there as well, but they are good for chronic pain diseases like fibromyalgia, arthritis, neuropathy. That's kind of the big one for the Neurontin, and low back pain. I think a lot of providers are trying to venture out with those type of medicines just to avoid using opioid medicines. Pregabalin is another medication that's good for targeting spinal cord injuries, fibromyalgia, and diabetic peripheral neuropathy. So there's some options out there that are non-opioid. Depression medicines can be helpful as adjunctive. They're not the first line, as I mentioned, but there is Cymbalta or duloxetine or Effexor. Paxil, Prozac, Zoloft can sometimes be used, but not as effective. But what it does help with is maybe your disease process has caused some anxiety or pain or sadness, and so it just kind of helps complement some of the other medications it takes. There are older drugs called tricyclic medications, nortriptyline, doxepin, or amitriptyline. Those are pretty old drugs. We try not to have older people on them anymore, but when they've been on them for years, it's just easier to leave them on and just monitor their overall health. A lot of times that was used for nerve pain at night or to help them sleep. So, let's see. The role of the opioids, basically, a lot of times doctors don't want to get into the opioids just because it's, to be truthful, it is a lot of required monitoring. Part of it is because there's so many side effects from them, but also a lot of times people think they're going to get addicted to it as well. So basically when your pain is not relieved by non-opioid medications, if your pain is severe, if your loved one might be enrolled in palliative care or in hospice and end of life, that's when you start seeing the opioid medications being used. Even post-op surgery-wise, people will come out with a few doses of the medication, hoping that it's just going to be short-lived, and then they don't need to have that, and they can turn it over to doing some Tylenol. That would be the goal of opioids in our eyes. Finally, when to go to a pain clinic. A lot of times people do get prescribed going to a pain clinic because they have persistent pain. Significantly impacts their daily life. Poor response to conventional therapy, like the Tylenol, the ibuprofens, the therapies. Unexplained or complex pain. Spreading or worsening of pain. And finally, dependence on pain medication that they can explore reduction or on reliance of the pain medication. So people who are on, I'm not going to say addiction, but rely heavily on opioids, going to a pain clinic, they can explore ways of getting them off. I know you mentioned Suboxone. That's a common one that we'll see people come through. And when they do, it just kind of gives me a trigger like, okay, they've been through something probably pretty bad, or they were addicted to something. So, and it's not I don't think it's a bad thing, but everyone has their own issues with pain at every level. As your primary provider, we're out there to help you out and guide the way for you. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. Next up is Dr. Carol Mueller-Leavitt of mHealth Fairview. She is a physical therapist with more than 25 years of experience specializing in rehabilitation following neurological conditions, as well as musculoskeletal strengthening and post-surgery recovery. She's passionate about designing personalized programs that restore function and build resilience. Carol says she believes in supporting people as they build confidence in their bodies. Her topic today is staying in motion.
Thanks, Leilani. Hello. So, I've been a physical therapist for a really long time. It's more than 25. After 20 years, I went back to school and I got my doctorate in physical therapy. And it really did change the way I practiced, and I was really surprised that it did. Exercise is such an important piece of life, growing and aging well. It has benefits for people with chronic pain. It has benefits for many other things as well. There's a lot of really good research out there that shows regular exercise will improve the symptoms of depression. It will provide a neuroprotective benefit in your brain for, it's not going to go down, is it? Regular exercise will provide a neuroprotective benefit in your brain to help reduce the risk or the symptoms of Parkinson's disease or dementia. And even after a stroke, regular exercise helps your body to move better, and it helps your brain to heal and stay well. We all have biodegradable bodies. And so we all have had pain or currently have pain. As Cynthia said, it is important to understand the difference between acute pain, which is something that should resolve with some help, and then chronic pain. We know that pain has different feelings. If you are really, really hungry, your stomach hurts. If you have eaten too much, your stomach hurts. It is important to be able to discern those different sensations because they need to be managed differently. When people are exercising, they often will feel pain, and so then they stop exercising. It is important to know if the pain or the discomfort that you're feeling is because your muscles are tired, like your thigh muscles are tired if you walk up 4 flights of steps when you typically don't ever climb stairs. That is a different sensation than if your legs hurt because you have a knee injury. So it is so important to be able to discern those different sensations. It is a different sensation if you're stretching a muscle because it has gotten too tight, oftentimes from disuse, and you're trying to lengthen it. That is a different sensation than your legs after you've walked up 4 flights of stairs. So attending to your body and paying attention to what you are feeling is really important, but that is different from what Cynthia had talked about with your pain is stabbing or burning. Those are descriptive words of the pain that brings you to your provider. The other sensations are more understanding what is going on in your body, because not all discomfort means that you're causing harm and damage. And so you really need to know those things. And that is one of the best reasons to come to physical therapy. Physicians do a really good job recommending physical therapy for people after an injury. What they don't often realize is that we still have a very important role to play with chronic pain and getting people back into movement. I am not asking you to join a health club if your back hurts so much that you can't get out of your chair. What a physical therapist can do for you is investigate whether or not you have tight muscles that make it hard for you to stand up out of your chair. If you have very specific weak muscles, which are supposed to be working as stabilizers, but they're not, and so then they cause other problems elsewhere. We as physical therapists can teach you certainly the stretches and help you to get going on an exercise program. If all you can do in the beginning is to get out of your house and walk to the end of the driveway, if that's all you can do, well, then that's where your body needs to start. Provided your driveway is not 2.5 miles long. So you really need to find something that you can do. Most people can walk, but a lot of people can't walk. Some people can walk if they're using a walker to help take some of the pressure off their back. A lot of people who have knee pain can't walk because it's too much weight on their knee joints. So then a stationary bike or the new step is a piece of equipment that a lot of places have where it's like a seated cross-country ski machine where you're using arms and legs, and you don't have to use arms if you have shoulder pain, but you can exercise and work your muscles without fighting gravity 100% of the time. The other type of exercise that works for so many people with really global chronic pain is to be getting in a pool. You can swim if that works for you and if you like to swim, but simply being in chest deep water and walking, moving your arms, moving your legs in a gravity reduced environment is very often a way that people can exercise and not tax their joints. There is always something that can be done. One of the most important parts of exercising, especially as we age, is resistance training. Resistance training is weightlifting. Again, I'm not asking you to join a gym. However, at some point in time, it's really hard to have enough weights at home to really give yourself a good workout and to lift. Resistance training builds muscle mass, which is really hard to do as we age because women lose our estrogen, we lose progesterone, we lose testosterone. Men also lose testosterone as they age, and a loss of muscle mass is really the only natural result of aging. All the other chronic diseases that people develop are not necessarily the result of aging. It is the loss of muscle mass that is the result of aging, and we have to work really hard to try to slow that. So resistance training and weightlifting is a critical piece to age well. There was an excellent study out of, I think it was either Norway or Sweden, and they looked at people in their 80s, 90s, and beyond who were living independently in their own home. And what they determined was the critical factor in allowing these people to remain living in their own home was being able to go from sitting to standing from a chair without using their hands and without pushing their legs on the back of a chair. So that's what you all need to do, is to practice going sitting to standing or some version of that in order to stay in your own home, if that is important to you. And most people it is. That is the other piece that physical therapy is really good at, is helping you get started in an exercise program, starting with body weight lifting, if that is what you have access to, if that is what works for you, and modifying the exercises so your body can do them. The other huge piece of staying active and staying healthy is nutrition. What we all can do, what we all need to start doing, is looking at food labels. Figuring out what a portion size is by looking at the label, figuring out what ingredients are in the food. If there are things in the food that if there are ingredients that you can't pronounce or you don't know what they are, they're probably not food. And you should try to select something that has fewer ingredients or something that you know what's in it. That was most striking to me when I decided I had to make tortillas because we were at the cabin and I forgot to bring them. And so the only ingredients in a tortilla is flour and water. However, if you look at the packages of tortillas that you buy in the store, there's a lot of other stuff in them that I can't pronounce. So that is a huge piece. So start looking at your labels to figure out what it is that you are eating. Look for sugar. If sugar shows up early in the ingredient list, that means that there's more sugar in it than the other items that come afterwards. Sugar has a lot of other names. High fructose corn syrup is a biggie. Anything that's fructose is sugar. There are sugar alcohols that often end in TOL or YTOL, and those are artificial sugars, which are not food. And they actually stimulate your hormones that make you feel hungry because they recognize something sweet coming in, but there's nothing that follows it. So it tells your brain, well, you got to find whatever is sweet because you told me I was getting sweet, but nothing else is coming. So you have to really be mindful of what it is you're eating, avoiding sugars as much as you are able. Avoiding sugars as much as you are able. The other enormous piece about Americans in particular is we really aren't getting enough protein in our diet. As we age and we no longer have as much of our hormones intact, estrogen for women particularly, progesterone and testosterone, those hormones help us to build muscle. And as we age, we don't have the level we need to build muscle. So we have to have protein. So we need pretty close to 1 gram of protein per pound of our ideal body weight. So that means over 100 grams of protein. You need to recognize if your lifestyle is really pretty sedentary and then you start eating steak 3 times a day, you will get your 100 grams, but that's not an appropriate response. But we do need to start looking at how much protein is in the food that you're eating and really try to get 60 grams at a minimum, 80 to 100 grams for women if you are exercising and trying to build muscle mass. Protein is a big deal because our hormones don't trigger our bodies to produce muscle anymore. And the weightlifting is the other big piece that produces our muscles to get stronger. Because we don't have the hormones doing the job to increase muscle mass, we have to have a strong external stimulus, which is lifting heavy weights. You don't have to do a lot of repetitions. You can do 6 to 8 repetitions, but it has to be really heavy so that your body thinks, oh my God, this is really heavy. I have to get stronger. And then that produces the internal stimulus to build muscle mass. So if you are doing 20 repetitions with a 2-pound weight, you're probably doing more harm than good. You need to have a much heavier weight, so you are really tired by the time you get to 10 repetitions. And that again is something a therapist can do, or there are often exercise classes. There's one that's hosted here, a strength and balance class that will get you started on the strengthening pieces, and you just have to remember that you have to lift heavy, you have to look at your food, you have to look at your labels, make sure that you're really eating food, and you recognize that the ingredients are food and they're not other chemicals. I have a sheet with some local resources because, pardon? They should have gotten it. Oh, good, it got passed out? Excellent. One of the best things to keep you faithful on an exercise program is having an exercise partner or a class. because it's a whole lot harder to say no to your friend, no, I'm not getting up to go to class this morning, than it is to say to yourself. So finding a class is a great, and a partner is a great way to build your social connection, to have a little bit of good-natured competition amongst each other in the class, to develop more community engagement, which also increases your quality of life. It decreases symptoms of depression and anxiety, which comes so closely with chronic pain. There is a support group that's local. We in this area have not had a support group forever. It is, the title of it is Stroke and Brain Injury Support Group. So that is the focus of that support group. It is survivors and caregivers of people who've had strokes, who've survived strokes or brain injuries, and they meet once a month, and Michelle Lang is the coordinator of that, and that is her personal phone number that's there as a contact. And then the one on the bottom of the page is for Parkinson's disease. I do quite a bit of work with people with Parkinson's disease, and the biggest focus with Parkinson's disease is exercise, exercise, exercise. And so there are two really good resources, the Parkinson's Foundation and the Davis Finney Foundation. If you or a family member is able to go online to look at those, they have a lot of offerings for education and caregivers and exercise. So never stop moving is really it. Thank you. Thank you.
For those of you, if you did not get the handout at the door that has the groups she mentioned, I'm sure they are still available at the entrance. Her handout had some addresses on the top of the sheet. Each speaker has a separate handout. All right, that was a great presentation. I know I learned a lot. Now coming up to the microphone is Dr. Colleen Erb, a licensed clinical psychologist with St. Croix Health. Dr. Erb completed her doctorate at the Minnesota School of Professional Psychology, also known as Argosy University, with an emphasis in medical psychology. Her practice focuses on understanding the relationship between mental and physical health and empowering people to make changes that improve both their emotional and physical well-being. She is certified in Empowered Relief, a single-session class that was developed at Stanford University, which has been found to be effective in treatment of chronic pain. Dr. Erb is excited to share how the mind can be a powerful tool in reducing the pain experience. Dr. Erb.
Well, thank you, Lana, and thank you all for being here. Great information so far, right? Louder. He's telling me to be louder. Move the mic, because I'm tall.
Yeah, you're tall, the rest of us are short.
How about that? All right. Again, thank you for having me. If you didn't get my handouts, again, get them on the way out. You have one that has the St. Croix logo at the top and another that has the Empowered Relief information, and I'll talk to you about that again. As Lana said, I'm a clinical psychologist and a certified instructor for Empowered Relief, and I've been working with individuals with chronic pain off and on for over 30 years. But I'm also someone who has a chronic pain condition, and I just want to echo what was said about physical therapy. I love my physical therapist. 5 years ago, I couldn't stand on one leg. This winter, I drove a sled dog team. Not very far before I face planted in the snow, but I got it done. So physical therapy can do wonders and definitely has been helpful in my own experience with pain. So you might wonder, why is a psychologist talking about pain? And I can tell you that certainly when patients, individuals with pain are referred to me, they're not generally very happy because their response is, Y'all think I'm crazy. You think it's all in my head. You're going to tell me just to think happy thoughts and it'll all go away. And I want to reassure you, if you have chronic pain, that that's absolutely not what I think and not what we think. That we know pain is very real. And we know individuals that experience pain, that it is both a physical and a psychological experience. And so, what we do as psychologists is we're looking at how pain affects us emotionally. And as our other speakers have talked about, we know there's a very close relationship between pain and the development of depression and anxiety. But we also look at how our psychology affects how we experience pain. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. And then I'm going to talk about a free class we offer at St. Croix Health where I talk about that in a lot of detail. And it is a free class that's offered online and anyone can attend. You don't have to be a St. Croix Health patient. So I want to talk first about the definition of pain, and you all know pain very well as this experience, but the International Association for the Study of Pain defines it as a noxious sensory and emotional experience. Now, I think they forgot something there. It's an obnoxious sensory and emotional experience. But you notice that last half of the definition there, and they're acknowledging that pain is a physical sensation, but it also has an emotional component. And again, for those of us that deal with chronic pain, we know that it affects us emotionally. It can be very stressful to have pain, and it can impact our entire lives. Maybe it interferes with our ability to work, with our relationships, with many aspects of our lives, and that can be very stressful. And as we said, it can lead to depression and anxiety. But as it functions, pain is really our harm alarm. What it's designed to do is let us know something's going on. So that works really well in acute pain. I put my hand on the stove, the alarm goes off, and I go, ouch! What did I do that for? And there's this physiological cascade of the heart rate increases, my breathing increases, gets more rapid, and my muscles tense so that I can quickly escape the danger. And really, our body is wired to escape pain. But what happens in chronic pain is that something's going on internally where an alarm's going off. We're not putting our hand on the stove all day, but we're getting a signal. And that's very frustrating to be wired to escape pain when you're not able to escape it, when it's coming from inside of you. And because of that, it creates this ongoing cycle of, I have pain, it raises my heart rate, it raises my blood pressure, my fight or flight response is going off, but I can't escape. So that creates even more pain because my body is tense and my high respiration rates, these physical, the adrenaline and the inflammatory chemicals, the cortisol's going off. And these ongoing cycles of pain and tension lead to more pain. And so when we're looking at psychological impact of pain, what we're looking at is we're not going to cure your chronic pain. We know that pain's very real and there's physical reasons. But I think of it as, can we turn down the volume on that alarm? Can we go, you've all been in a building when that really obnoxious fire alarm goes off, right? And can we turn down the volume enough so that it's tolerable and manageable? So again, pain's our harm alarm, and pain creates anxiety, depression, and anxiety and stress. But also what we know is that stress, anxiety, and depression tend to prime us for pain. And the reason for that is that those kind of uncomfortable emotions share the same real estate in our brain as physical pain. They involve a lot of the same chemicals. So our body doesn't really know the difference between emotional pain and physical pain. Physiologically, it's the same system. And so when that harm alarm is ringing, biochemically, our brain doesn't really know if it's physical or emotional. It just knows it's ringing. Okay. And so, in that sense, those emotions of depression, anxiety, other physiological issues can serve to amplify that harm alarm, kind of like, putting it through an amplifier, or like the microphone, the harm alarm might be just this without those emotions, but as soon as I put that application on, it's louder. And so they tend to feed into that pain cycle. Well, now we also know about pain in your brain is that pain actually changes the brain. When we look at studies of people who've had chronic migraines, who have chronic pain, we actually see shrinkage of certain areas of the brain. And we see shrinkage in the areas of the brain that are involved in pain mediation, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of, just behind here, front part of our brain. And for people who've had long-term chronic pain, the shrinkage is greater. People who've had migraines, often they see that shrinkage in the brain. But what's interesting is that we know that people who kind of have persistent unhelpful thoughts about pain tend to have more difficulty with pain. So it's normal and natural to have negative thoughts about pain. I mean, who likes pain? And aren't you naturally going to have anxiety about pain and worried thoughts about pain? So it's completely normal to have negative thoughts about pain. But if I'm constantly thinking, this is awful, this is terrible, this is never going to get better, it feeds into that harm alarm, it amplifies it. And the research shows our pain treatments don't work as well when people have a lot of those negative thoughts. And there's ways we can measure those levels of negative thoughts, and we can measure the decreases in those thoughts. And what we know, again, is that people who have high levels of unhelpful thoughts, high levels of depression and anxiety, tend to have greater pain responses, and their treatments don't work as well. What we also know, earlier we were talking about, acute versus chronic pain, that people who, for example, go in for a knee surgery, if they go in with those higher negative thoughts, they're more likely to develop chronic pain than a person who doesn't have those thoughts. So they may play a role in the development of that chronic pain. Now, here's the really good news, though. The research shows that people who are able to practice certain skills of learning to relax the mind and body, skills of learning to neutralize those negative thoughts. Okay, and again, I want to be careful here because this is not just putting on rose-colored glasses and pretending everything's okay. It's not the toxic positivity of just think happy thoughts and you'll be better. But it's creating a more neutral thought. Okay, so an example of that might be I'll just pretend I'm not hurting, but I'm hurting, but my physical therapy can help me. Or I'm hurting, but if I use my topicals, I can get some relief. Okay, so that's a neutral thought. It holds a little bit of hope, a little bit of, rather than this is terrible, this is awful, and there's nothing I can do. Having just a little bit of sense of control tends to calm down that fight or flight response and that harm alarm, okay? And what the research shows is that when people are able to do that, or learning to calm the nervous system over time, learning to neutralize those negative thoughts, they can actually regrow that part of the brain involved in pain mediation. And that that part of the brain can redevelop, and they can change that. And the research has shown that with studies of cognitive behavior therapy for pain. Now, cognitive behavior therapy for pain has been researched and shown to be very effective, and it usually involves people coming in for 8 weeks and sitting in a group for 2 hours a week for 8 weeks, okay? Now, you've all been sitting on these chairs for about an hour. How excited do you think my chronic pain patients who live in rural Wisconsin, by the way, and are going to have to drive 45 minutes to an hour just to get to my group and then sit on one of these hard chairs for 2 hours and then drive the hour home are about coming to a group for 2 hours for 8 weeks? Yeah. No, they don't want to come. So how I got into empowered relief is I was looking for what should we do for patients, what's effective, but also what's really easy to deliver. Because it's also really a pain for psychologists to do groups. We have to do a note on everybody, and we have to do an intake on everybody. And it's a lot of work. And so I was at the American Academy for Pain Medicine conference, and I ran across this model called empowered relief. And this was developed kind of in late 1999, early 2020. And what they did is they took what they thought were the most important elements from that cognitive behavioral group, and they compressed it into a single session, 2-hour class. Okay? And then COVID hit. So guess what? They had to deliver it virtually. Okay? And what they found is they got just as good of results from that one single session class as they did from their 8-week group. Okay? But patients were, and so I'm sorry to use the term patients. I work at a hospital, is how we talk, sorry. But people who attended that class substantially reduced their pain. They reduced their pain-related distress. Their depression and anxiety was reduced. Their sleep was better. And those results held at 3 months. And then they got an additional NIH grant, and there's been several studies since then, and they found those results to hold at 6 months. But it's not the attending of the group that changes things. It's by taking some really simple tools and practicing them regularly. And sometimes when we talk about the tools, they almost sound too easy because they're changing our thoughts, learning to do some regular relaxation, and learning to use some self-soothing activities. And so sometimes, again, people can say, well, I'm hurting and you're telling me to have a cup of tea. And it's like, no, I'm not telling you to have a cup of tea. I'm telling you that doing something that's self-soothing is going to calm your nervous system. And when you practice these skills regularly, and that regular calming of your nervous system is going to help that harm alarm calm down, and it's going to give you some measure of your control, and it's going to help your medical treatments work better. Is it a cure? No, you still need to do your medical treatments. Those are still important. But it can help you use your pain computer, because all pain is processed in your brain, to work for you instead of against you. So you should have received a handout looks like this. And if you'd like to learn more about this and go into more detail, you're all welcome to attend the class. You can use the QR code there, but if you're not tech savvy and don't even know what a QR code is, you can go to our St. Croix Health website and just put in empowered relief. It'll take you to the link. There'll be a button to click to register. It's going to ask you for your address and your email. I promise we are not going to put you on any of those nasty email lists where I'm going to then bomb you with all kinds of emails. I'm simply going to send you the course materials and the link. And then for those who attend afterwards, we send you a special audio file that has some relaxation technique and has something called binaural technology on it that's been found to be effective in pain relief. But that's another long story about how that works, and you have to come to the class to learn about that. So I think I'm at my time, and I want to be sensitive to that. So again, all pain's processed in your brain. So this is just really about learning to use your brain to work with you rather than against you in managing your pain. So I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, we've certainly been looking at pain from every angle, and I think that's good. I hope you were writing down your questions. And if you can't hear me, let me know. You can hold up your hand if you can't hear me. I have just a couple questions. I'm going to ask this one first because I know Cynthia has to leave. She has to work this afternoon. Not Cynthia, Carol. Carol has to leave. Can a person experiencing chronic pain self-refer for physical therapy, or do they need a physician order?
Both.
Hold on.
Sorry. Is this working now?
Yeah, that works.
Minnesota law allows you to self-refer. However, most insurance plans require you to get a physician's referral to go to physical therapy. So it's like a prescription at the pharmacy. You have to have a physician's order for physical therapy, and then you can choose whichever physical therapy clinic you want that is in your network.
Thank you. Thank you. This also gets at another area, and I think either of Dr. Erb or from someone from St. Croix, I am Health Fairview. Just in the general picture of things as people age, say they need surgery, say they need knee surgery, or they've been told they need knee surgery, they've been told they need hip surgery, or they need rotator cuff surgery, but they want to avoid surgery, or they aren't a good candidate for surgery for some other health reason. What alternative forms do you feel have proven, what's their best next avenue to try to respond short of surgery? I mean, do you have any recommendation as to what's their next course of action? Oh, you can all answer. Yeah.
Exercise. It's actually, no, there's more than that. Particularly using a walker. If you have knee pain, hip pain, back pain, a walker is often effective to offload the joints, so there's not as much pressure. Shoulders are really tough because it's really hard to rest your shoulder. Shoulders are really tough ones. Sometimes bracing is effective. Yeah. Sometimes if you can't do what you want to and need to in life, you need to have surgery if it is medically possible.
Yeah.
I often think of using a lot of times when I have people who cannot do surgery, I think of doing the topical medications. It just helps locally with them, and a lot of it is keeping up with just plain old Tylenol, keeping on top of that, because otherwise you're chasing that pain. No, a lot of people don't like to take medications, and we get it, but sometimes chasing the pain is a lot worse because it can lead into the depression and the other social aspects of isolation and such. So, but I agree, using a walker for balance, it honestly can open up a lot for someone in their life to get out and about. So.
I think the answer to that question really depends a lot on where the pain is and what the underlying condition is, because there may be different options depending on that. One of the things I do at St. Croix Health is I do pre-surgical evaluations that are required for back surgeries, but also for something called a spinal cord stimulator. And people have different views on that, but for some of our older patients where a back surgery that's more invasive is not an option, the spinal cord stimulator, which basically masks the pain signal with an electrical stimuli, is a less restrictive or less invasive option. There are also something called a TENS unit. And then the other plug for PT I'm going to say is, again, depending on what you're doing, it might be an ergonomics evaluation or looking at how you're doing what you're doing. So my PT was able to help look at my office setup, but a lot of times how you're working in your kitchen might need to adjust. Maybe you use a stool. Maybe you don't have the pots and pans in the bottom shelf anymore, and you put them up. My mom was constantly moving her how she had her kitchen arranged based on her back and shoulder pain, and what she needed at the time. When she had her shoulder injury, she couldn't reach high, so everything that she needed got put down low. When she had her back injury, she couldn't reach low, so everything got put up higher. And she just bossed people around and got it to the level that she needed. And, and then she could be independent because she had it but we don't think about those things sometimes. And PTs and OTs can be really helpful in kind of those looking at your environment and giving you that kind of ergonomic, maybe there's a different way of doing what you're doing, that raised gardens, those kinds of things that we just don't think about sometimes, where a different set of eyes can be really helpful.
Thank you. Those were great answers. Okay, now we have questions from the audience. Betsy, can you be the mic deliverer? Betsy's younger. She's my daughter's age, so I can, okay. Raise your hand, gentleman there. We'll go. Okay, start with Gordon.
This is for Carol. You talked a little bit about stretching, and advise me as the timing of stretching. If I'm going to be exercising, exerting, should I stretch just before, or rather than half hour later, then the stretching loses its effect? Is that?
Stretching before an activity needs to be thought of as a warm-up. So then you hold your stretch for 10 seconds maybe and do it 3 times. After you exercise, you want to lengthen the muscles because they have worked really hard and they have shortened. So that's when you need to hold the stretch for longer, so closer to 30 seconds and 2 times on each side. Okay?
So,
Betsy.
is there any one of the people here that can make a recommendation for information on metabolic syndrome, gut biome, ketogenic diets, which a lot of the problems that we're talking about here, there's more and more better information that's coming out where the diet becomes so important, all aspects of it, and then with leaning towards ketogenic restrictions, that kind of thing. Or does age well? Does that? When I was looking at the food sources, nutrition, it's about how to get food, but not about the dietitian part of it, the specifics.
Anyone here want to address?
There's a lot that's really a hot topic, and a lot of people disagree about what is the best diet. Should it be a carnivore diet? Should it be a Mediterranean diet? Should it be a vegetarian diet? Should it be a keto diet? And so much of it depends on your constitution and what is going on internally. I don't have any specific recommendations. Of course, on the internet, you're going to find everything. You're going to find the good and bad of both. And it is a really tough decision. And there's a ton of information out there. And I don't have any guiding principles for you. I'm sorry.
I don't know anything about the research in that, but I'm going to tell you what my friend Farmer Mike says, because I think it's good advice. Eat plants and the things that eat plants, but mostly plants.
I love that one. I do try to eat whole foods. I think the more the fewer ingredients and the more real food. That's what I try to do.
Right. Yeah, I have a question. I think it's for Cynthia regarding pain management care. Did you mention something about it being a prescription? Like, is this covered by insurance or something you do on your own, or how does that usually work?
So a lot of times what happens is people will start with over-the-counter medications. It can be topical meds. It can be Tylenol and ibuprofen are going to be your most common ones that are being used. It's a lot of times what happens is it may lead them to go to a provider because they've been using it for so long and they're just not getting relief. So they're just maybe more in tune with, hey, what's going on? What can I do for this? And that's where they would probably get into imaging to see exactly, well, what's bothering you? Is it a muscle strain? Is it orthopedics? Is it your stomach? I'll just share this. I just had someone who I took care of, and she went to home now, but she thought she was going to get a knee surgery and ended up finding she had cancer, unfortunately. So you just never know what's going to happen. You know, the pain obviously is something that's telling you something's wrong. You try to treat it yourself like most people do, but then sometimes it'll lead you to go to the doctor, and then they refer you either to a specialist or therapies. They'll talk to you about what have you used to do or done to help it out, and then they go from there.
Yeah, I think I'm speaking more like you see these TV ads for pain care management, like neuro, whatever
Oh.
place that is. So I'm talking about facility type places.
Oh, the pain clinics
Yeah.
and such like that. So, a lot of times your doctor may refer you to it, or if you could self-refer, then go to it. A lot of times it's because you've exhausted everything, and they're kind of they may have some creative resources to do. Maybe they want to non-invasive things, or I shouldn't say non-invasive, but I'm thinking like nerve blocks or like the stimulators and things like that. So a lot of times those pain clinics will deal with those.
Yeah, and I know our pain clinic, you can self-refer, or you can get a referral from your family practice or your general practitioner. Again, with insurance wise, it's probably a good idea to have a referral from your general medical practitioner, because you may need some kind of prior authorization, and so then they can get that.
Sometimes I'll ask families to just call the clinic themselves, and I'll just say, if you need a referral, then please come back to me and I will certainly get you one. They're pretty easy to do, but like you said, a lot of the insurances require you to have it from a provider.
Would it be correct? I believe that both M Health Fairview and St. Croix have active pain clinics at their facilities. Yes, they both do. So both those local providers do have a pain clinic that offers some of these alternatives.
This is for Colleen. Do you teach biofeedback?
I don't personally teach biofeedback, and biofeedback is another tool, but biofeedback is essentially learning relaxation skills. There's just lots of electronics, bells and whistles to help you learn it. And I find most people don't need that. Most people can learn it without that. And so I certainly teach the skills that are learned in biofeedback, but I don't use the biofeedback equipment to teach it.
I was at a neurologist yesterday down at the U with who specializes in peripheral neuropathy. He ordered a lot of blood work and more testing, but one of the sideline things that he wrote on my sheet and just briefly touched was the use of some of the kind of vibrating mechanisms, and in something, I believe the initials were TOMA, which was just approved by Medicare and things for pain management. I have very severe restless leg syndrome also, and peripheral neuropathy. And I was just wondering if you've had any experience on these kind of vibrating mats that you put on your legs, I think is what he kind of described it as. And then I also have heard about going to places where they use laser, where they've used other stimulation, but it's usually not covered by insurance at all. And he said, stay away from that. You're going to spend thousands of dollars without. But then he did, I think it was called a Resomat or something that you sort of strapped on your leg. But we got home late last night and I haven't had time to research it. But I was wondering if any of you had any thoughts on that for peripheral neuropathy.
Do you know a little about it?
Well, I don't. No, I've not heard of that, but I had a gentleman who went to one of those things and paid a lot of money because of it was talked about so good. And he actually didn't really have much results from it. It was pretty severe and such. But I just had a conversation yesterday with someone about a weighted blanket that they had. And I said, it'd be worth it because it does help calm your nerves down. And hopefully then you can sleep better, or just even if you're just sitting in a chair, you can certainly put that over you. And then hopefully it just helps calm yourself down, but calm your nerves down so they're tolerable. Sometimes those pains, I think most people just hope that they can get it under control, that they can manage day to day. So
I'm sorry we didn't know about that particular item, but yeah.
Toma, the TOMA, isn't that the brand new medication? Yeah, it's a brand new medication, and I haven't seen anybody on it yet. Yeah, so I don't have any experience with it yet.
It's really new.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Right here.
Okay.
I just have a quick hint. I don't work for. I just have a quick hint. I have a lot of muscle soreness and joint pain. I have PMR and osteoarthritis. And a lot of the rub-ons or roll-ons that you can buy over the counter have menthol. But I found one, Salon Paws, has lidocaine. And it is very helpful, and I just want you to know that in case you're interested. It has made a difference in my life.
Betsy, we got one up here too.
Here's another question.
Okay, we'll get to you, ma'am.
All right, it's more of a comment regarding the Solanapas that the gal just talked about. I don't have her attention though. She's talking. Salon Pass, yeah. They have a website, Salon Pass, that you can get one free patch advertised right now. No catches. Just get on their website and sign up for it.
Okay.
It's a free pain patch.
Betsy, we have two gals up here. The orange and the teal.
My husband was a combat medic in Vietnam, and the chief thing he carried that helped people was lidocaine, because it numbs almost instantly. And I noticed, I've tried all kinds of different things. I have level 4 osteoarthritis, and I always look for lidocaine in it. There's menthol and stuff, and that kind of gives you a different feeling, but the lidocaine actually does numb it down, and you can do roll-ons or patches or rub-ons or all kinds of things. And I'm a painter, and I'd like to say too that getting your mind off of pain sometimes onto something that kind of takes up your whole mind helps relieve pain, because you lose tenseness. So I have a studio, and if anybody needs any paintings, I have lots. But that has helped me just to get it off my mind. Because if I just sit there and I'm not fully concentrating on the TV or something, it just gets worse and worse.
Another thing that I was wondering of what your thoughts are of drinking tonic water, because it contains, is it quinidine in there? That I read it, and I actually had some tonic water, and I had a glass of it last night before I went to bed, and it seemed to make a difference. You know.
That's interesting, because I have some friends who always drink tonic water when we go out. That is interesting. But quinine, my father, who died not long ago, anything that ever went wrong with me, he treated me with quinine. Any other questions? She'll bring you the mic.
Just a quick question. I wondered why no one mentioned cortisone.
Oh,
Are you not in favor of that?
That's a good question. I could have put that in my questions. Who wants to answer that?
I should have said something about it, but yes, you can, depending on what kind of joint it is, your provider may be able to do a cortisone injection, or they could refer you to orthopedics or sports medicine, and they easily do cortisone injections as well. So that is another alternative. The injection can last, usually it's every 3 months you're allowed to get one. It can help relieve that, you can take the inflammation down, and hopefully you can start moving that joint around better and exercise it more. Most people tolerate it pretty well. I guess I never see really too much negatives, except for they may just say it didn't last me very long. So, but yes, it is. I kind of find it as a good alternative for people who cannot have surgery. So, but then usually I may get a specialist involved for that. So,
And then I actually have a comment about cortisone. That's okay. Cortisone, like all medications, has drawbacks. I think that cortisone is a necessary evil, quite honestly. It does relieve the inflammation, and so many times after an injection, people can do exercises because it was far too painful before. The reason that the cortisone is limited to once every 3 or 4 months is that there's some, of course, you can find research that will show anything, that there is research out there that shows that cortisone does weaken the tendons. So if you repeatedly have cortisone injections in your shoulder, your risk for a rotator cuff goes up. So there are always side effects, and the physicians have to be really mindful and really careful about using cortisone. Do you have a comment?
Well, not on cortisone, but to go back. Whoops. What'd I do? I'm sorry. Oh. To go back to the tonic water. So, you said your dad gave you tonic water for everything. And one of the things we know is there's a placebo effect, right? And in the old days in research, we used to say, well, if there's placebo effect, then it didn't work. Now what we really are looking at in the psychology, we look at is, what's wrong with using the placebo effect? I mean, that basically says if you believe it works, it will. And what that's saying is your positive expectations, your positive thoughts make things more effective. And that's part of when we talked about, again, bringing your thoughts to neutral or making your thoughts positive. There's a higher chance your treatments will work, whatever they are, if you believe they will. So it's good to go in with any treatment with optimism that it will be effective for you, because then it is more likely to be effective for you. Likewise, the research shows if you expect more pain, you will tend to have more pain. Okay? And I could talk more about that. But anyway, set that positive expectation. We don't know if it'll work or not, but it doesn't hurt to think that it likely will. And it potentially could help you to think that it will.
There used to be a song, accentuate the positive. That's what that's making me think of. Now, our time is getting long. We'll take 1 or 2 more questions only here now. Do we have anything else?
Did you have something? Yeah, sure. Does stress cause less sleep or not?
Betsy, what was that? I didn't hear this.
Does stress cause you less sleep or not?
Stress
Cause you less.
Well, I would think it would affect your sleep for sure.
Well, yes, and one of the other things I do is cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, which actually works better than medications for sleep. So good sleep happens when we can lower our arousal and build good sleep drive. And so if we're stressed, we have more difficulty lowering our arousal. And again, pain can interfere with sleep in that the pain tends to cause our arousal to be high. But I also find that many people will say, well, I can't sleep because of the pain. But if we treat their sleep problems, maybe they have a habit of not having a good sleep schedule or some of the things that we can do to improve sleep, we can treat their sleep. And in fact, the research shows again that if we treat sleep problems with cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, people's pain also gets better. So in a study of CBTI, they found people with fibromyalgia had less pain when they treated their sleep. So yes, that was a longer answer than you wanted, but stress does affect our sleep, and addressing our sleep issues can be very effective in helping with pain.
I wanted to add that the physical therapy suggestion about an exercise bike, when I was 75, I gave myself one for my birthday. I'm 88, and it's the only reason that I'm still moving.
Good for you.
All right. I think we just have had a great event here, and we've had a lot of discussion. I think there's a lot more that could be said. Each of these speakers did provide a handout. I know you got a white paper, but if you didn't think you got, Dr. Herbs was the colored one. These two gals had a white one. One of theirs had addresses on the top. If you didn't get those, I'm sure you can get them at the tables at the door before you go. But wait, we have to close here. I just want to thank our speakers and our presenters at the tables. Take time before you go to stop and talk to the gals at the tables. Also, on your table, remember your evaluation form. Really, really, really please take the moment to fill it out, especially your comments, because your comments help us and your suggestions help us of future topics. And so please, we do want them. You can either leave it on the table or drop it off at the table at the door before you go. Now, be sure to talk to Steve Romler Network. Please talk to the county. Also, I'd just like to remind you that we do rely very much, entirely in fact, on grants and donations. We hope you found today's program helpful. We never charge for the program, but we do invite you to partner with us. Any financial report we receive today or through our website, chisagoagewell.org, is most welcome and will enable us to continue to do these in the future. So we do appreciate your financial support if you can give it. It's wonderful, but we don't expect it, and we always offer the event is open to all. So at this point, I want to mention that our next Dine and Discover event will be held August 12th. There'll again be one here and one at the North Branch Senior Center, where the two of these gals are going to be this afternoon, repeating today's program. And watch for it in your local newspaper and on your community ed web pages or catalogs that will be coming out. Probably not before August, but for our October event, which is called the Agewell Expo, that's a half-day event. It will be held at Chisago Lakes High School October 17th. And our next event here will be August 12th, and that will be, I know you're going to groan if you're not a techie, but we are doing My Chart 101. And all of our local health providers happen to use My Chart, and so they're going to be involved, and we hope you're going to, because it's just going to help you to get, understand how to use it and, not have it be an obstacle, but to have it to be an assist. So we look forward to that. It'll actually be a little classroom session for everybody to come. We appreciate the collaboration of our local healthcare providers. So thank you for coming. Thank everyone for speaking.